Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the International Seminars on Health, a course offered by the Postgraduate Program in Nutrition at the Federal University of Santa Catarina, UFSC. I am Professor Ana Carolina Fernandez, one of the professors of this course, together with my colleague Deborah Higger and our postdoctoral fellow Mariana Kremer, who is here too. We are pleased to have you with us today again in our third and final day of seminars of this course. Some of the students of this course are here in the StreamYard platform, and others are watching us via our YouTube live stream. Today, you have one speaker. Our student Laura Copetti will be hosting Dr. Melissa Fernandez from Canada. It's a pleasure to have her here. And for this seminar, we will have a presentation by our guest speaker lasting between 15 30 minutes, followed by a 15 minutes session of questions and answers, where you have the chance to engage in a discussion, to ask questions for our guest, okay? Now I would like to invite Laura Copetti to introduce our guest of today, and thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laura Copetti Souza. I am PhD student in nutrition at the Federal University of Santa Catarina. It's a pleasure to be here today to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Fernandez. Dr. Melissa Fernandez is a registered dietitian and PhD in nutrition at the University of Laval, Canada. In 2020, Dr. Fernandez completed her postdoctoral fellowship at the School of Public Health at the University of Alberta, and she also an assistant professor in the School of Nutrition Science at the University of Ottawa, Canada. Her research focuses on understanding the impacts of digital environments on health and nutrition, and how the internet can influence the way we eat. She has been conducting research on digital food retail, for example, online groceries and food delivery apps, nutrition influencers, navigation nutrition misinformation on social media, and studying the connections between food literacy, mental health, and well-being. Thank you, Dr. Fernandez. If you are ready, you can start your presentation.
Thank you so much, Lara, for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here to talk a bit about my journey, and that journey includes a journey through my career because I consider myself an accidental researcher, an accidental academic. It is not a career that I ever knew about when I was younger. And I'm going to talk about this presentation in about 5 chapters. The first chapter describes me being a lost student. I didn't get into my first choice program at my first choice university. So I left my hometown of Montreal to go to a small university in a smaller town. And I studied a little bit of everything. I got a degree in biology. I studied some Italian, and I minored in business. And I thought this would be a good combination to help me do some international business with science. But at the end, I was really not happy with and not interested in working in any of the related fields. So I traveled. I spent several years traveling around the world, doing any kind of job that will get me to a new destination. So it was a very exciting and time in my life. But after several years, I realized I need something more stable that will allow me a regular paycheck so that I can do something with my life that doesn't involve just jumping from one town or one country to the next. So I went back to school. And I started a second undergraduate degree in dietetics because I liked food. So I thought this might be a good fit. And after a few weeks, I was just completely heartbroken because this program was so rigid and not what I expected. So I almost quit. But then my advisor suggested I do a master's because I already had a degree. So I ended up switching into a master's program, and that program was fantastic. I did a master's in nutrition where I got to study child obesity in Barbados and do a prevalence study and look at a little bit of food literacy in children in Barbados. And it was such a fantastic experience. And then after I completed my master's, I got a graduate diploma in registered dietitian credentialing. So I am a registered dietitian. And my first job that I was hoping to get was to be in the international area because I really liked traveling and I really liked working in different countries. But unfortunately, all the job applications I wrote came back to me rejected. And one organization even told me that I should get some volunteer experience in humanitarian work before applying. So again, heartbroken that I couldn't do what I wanted to do. And I ended up going based on some advice from another mentor and advisor to work in Northern Canada with First Nations people. So I became a dietitian in a traditional diet program in Northern Canada, where in the winter we get almost no light, and in the summer we get almost no dark. So that was another fantastic experience, but I felt a little bit powerless because the needs of the people weren't being met by the program that I was running. There were so many complex issues with the program in terms of alcoholism, suicide, access to clean water, or just access to water. So I felt I needed to get some more experience. I needed to get some more credentials to be able to be in a position of power where I can influence the programming and create programs that really meet the needs of the communities that they're intended to support. So I went back to school. And this time I went into a PhD program. There was an opportunity that came up, and it came around the right time where I was going to evaluate a healthy eating campaign that our health authority, Health Canada, had ran on food literacy. So when I started this program, it was really not I had no intention of joining academia. I had no intention of becoming a researcher or a professor. I was really just interested in getting more experience and having a bit more knowledge to be able to get jobs that will allow me to make change. But it turned out I found a passion for research and I was good at it. And I never really thought or knew that I was good at anything before I really started my PhD. And I started writing and I started publishing, and then some awards came, and then I ended up getting the big successful fellowships. And one of these fellowships allowed me to start a postdoc. So during my PhD, I became a food literacy researcher. And food literacy is really the way that I describe my research interests. And by food literacy, I mean I'm interested in understanding the knowledge, the skills, and behaviors that influence what consumers eat, from food selection to how people are preparing their food and then how they're eating it. And my big idea for my postdoc was to combine my food literacy expertise with my future supervisor's food environment expertise. So looking at how food literacy and food environments can interact to support healthy eating practices. So my big postdoc plan, I had funding for 3 years with a very competitive fellowship program. It was going to be to build resilience to our obesogenic food environments through food literacy. And that would result in healthy and happy outcomes for children and youth. But this got completely turned upside down. And it got turned upside down because I kept on hearing more and more anecdotes about how digital food retail, so Uber Eats and Skip the Dishes and those food delivery apps, are kind of disrupting regular meal times and eating habits of our youth. So this is back in 2019, right before I started my postdoc. Um, and this is a news article saying that about how disruptive food delivery drivers were on high school property because they kept on interrupting classes and there's strangers on the campus. So this was really mind blowing to me because how was I going to implement my big plan of building resilience to food environments if we can't even teach children food literacy because they're not even interacting with food preparation or even seeing food preparation at home because they're just getting their food delivered through these apps. So I had to really take a pause and think because I was like really distraught about what am I going to do with the next 3 years of my postdoc because I don't know that this is going to be possible because our environment is changing. So I ended up rethinking my postdoc to look at food digital food environments. And I initially thought I'd look at resilience to digital food environments through food literacy. But in reality, we don't understand digital food environments, especially at this time. So this is back in 2019. This wasn't even a term that was known when I started trying to figure out how to research this. So, digital food environments is really what I consider the online context that will dictate our food accessibility, our food affordability and availability, but also the accessibility. So the physical environment from our traditional food environment has been replaced by this online to offline setting where people can order things on their phones and then they receive the orders and eat offline. So they're ordering online and receiving offline. Our policies relating to all sorts of things in terms of food are becoming blurred and ineffective. So if you think of nutrition labeling and front of label packaging online, that takes on a whole different context because people aren't reading labels online when they go grocery shopping. They aren't reading or even seeing, maybe paying attention to any front of label packaging. And then the communication and social environments that are normally offline completely converge on social media, where you have this really rapid spread of information and misinformation and overload of information through social media in online contexts. And of course, there's like there can be an increasing economic divide where people who have access to resources and have access to be able to pay for healthier options online and better technology, or even just have regular access to the internet may be able to benefit from certain services more than others. So in 2019, the term digital food environment was first used by a PhD student in Norway. And so this is the first time the term digital food environment came out in the literature. In 2020, I led a grant with my supervisor in collaboration with Health Canada to talk about priorities for researching digital food environments. That same year, there was an entire UNSCN nutrition bulletin dedicated to digital food environments, as well as a webinar series. And then in 2021, a fact sheet was developed by the WHO along with another webinar series. There was a scoping review that mapped digital food environments, and a special edition on digital food environments came out in the journal Nutrients. So things were slowly happening. Starting to build up momentum starting in 2019 on digital food environment research. And myself and my postdoc, I was also looking at online food delivery, and I had just gotten finished a small project, a qualitative project, and I had just gotten a grant to run a quantitative project on online food delivery. So my postdoc was going really, really well, but then the world turned upside down. My world, personal life, turned upside down with COVID and pregnancy and a parental leave, and my rapid success and high productivity completely went down. So we have to think about our careers as a marathon. A marathon, there'll be ups and downs in energy, but you have to, keep up, keep up a little bit of hope for, and continue plodding along. So right now, I'm running at a slower pace, but I am continuing to move forward. Move forward a little bit by little bit on my digital food retail research, digital food environment research. So meanwhile, in in 2022, I got my assistant professorship at the University of Ottawa. So I have been here for 3 years now. And although my research is moving along at a slower pace, the world has moved along in digital food environment research at a fast pace. So they have by far outpaced what I do in digital food environments. The WHO has came out with a report on obesity and looks at digital food environments as another type of obesogenic food environment, and the different kinds of foodscapes within this environment that a WHO is interested in are digital food marketing, active video games, and internet-based interventions, online supermarkets, and meal delivery apps or food delivery apps. Again, the world has moved forward at a very rapid pace. I study digital food retail and nutrition communication online with the intention of looking at how that impacts nutritional health, physical health, and mental health. But there's lots of people in the world researching different types of foodscapes that also have impacts on society. So, the economic health of society, food systems, and community and connection. So, how the digital food environment and the foodscapes within that environment are impacting both society and health. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I'm going to talk specifically about the research that I've done. So there's two aspects to my research, two big aspects. One is digital food retail, and the other one is nutrition communication online. So in terms of digital food retail, what we know about it? Well, we know that there's a hyper accessibility to a variety of food. But highly processed foods are aggressively promoted online on these, especially on the food retail apps. And there are some perceptions of reduced impulse purchasing, but we don't really know that those perceptions are quite accurate. In Canada, 45% of Canadians use digital food retail services. And when I talk about digital food retail, I'm not just talking about food delivery apps, but also online groceries and meal kits. Although food delivery apps are used by a larger proportion of people. So I ran I think I got my slides mixed up, but I ran two studies. One was a qualitative study, and that looked at the context of using digital food retail services. And overall, the findings show that time and convenience are the main drivers for using these services. The thing is that this isn't anything mind blowing, it's nothing new. This has existed since online groceries first came out more than 20 years ago. So the reasons haven't changed. And not only have they not changed, these reasons are prominent regardless of whether someone is 16 years old or 60, and regardless if someone is in a different phase in their life, whether they are retired or whether they're a young parent. So the time and convenience are pretty universal themes for motivating the use of these services. So we have to think in terms of public health and how can we meet consumers where they are at. So in terms of needing services and products that are that can save time or that are convenient. The other aspect that came out was that there is a feeling in line with convenience and time of well-being and work-life balance for using these services. So if a parent can order food that will be home at the same time that they get home, they might feel less stressed. Or if they can do groceries while sitting down and breastfeeding on their phone, then that helps them, again, save time and stress less about dragging their infant out into, again, in the cold in Canada. There is also indications of people avoiding cold weather, so going outside to go shopping in the cold, they can just get the food delivered at home. So those are major contexts for using these services. The second study was a quantitative study, and that essentially looked at the frequency of digital food retail use and its association with both diet quality and food literacy. So here we see that the more often people use digital food retail services, and that's all three of them together, the lower the diet quality was. And the more often they used these services, the lower their food literacy was. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the communication environment. And social media is such an important source of nutrition information for the public, but that can also be a source of misinformation. And I fear that it might be more of a source of misinformation than any kind of benign or actual accurate information. Social media has very unique elements because it's the user generates the content, and it is an active engagement with the content. People can like it, they can share it, they can comment on it. So it is very interactive. Um, as I mentioned, it's a source of nutrition misinformation. And in traditional media, we would just be exposed to TV or billboards or magazines. But online, our social networks really converge with our communication environments and our media on social media. So it really extends our social networks, but it can also extend in a positive way our communities of support, perhaps for weight loss or for challenges with feeding children. It also has this impact on really being able to target advertising to consumers, especially the big businesses of with the food and beverage companies. But we also see something interesting because there are independent food and nutrition influencers that are not associated with any kind of industry or companies that also can have a big influence on consumers. Nutrition influencers specifically, I define as people who promote products, services, or even ideas or ideology about food, diets, and nutrition. And I ran a study looking at Instagram influencers. And we profiled three by looking at a subset of about 100 or so influencers. We profiled three main profiles from these influencers. The one profile is the dietitian. So the dietitian in general supports nutritional health. They are licensed experts. They follow a strict professional code of conduct, so their hands are tied a little bit in terms of what they can do and say online. So they have to provide correct information, and they infrequently sell or promote products. Then there's the amateur cook. And the amateur cook is someone who supports food literacy. They're essentially sharing cooking tips, and they might sell recipe books, but they're not necessarily promoting food products or vitamins and supplements. And they don't share a substantial amount of health information. They're really sharing the tools and the tips around how to cook. So compared to our dietitian, with 0.3 million followers, our amateur cook has 1.6 million followers. And then we have our pseudo expert. And the pseudo expert really contributes to health misinformation and disinformation. They can use misleading titles, they misrepresent science and research, and they tend to sell a lot of products like supplements. And this type of influencer has about 1.7 million followers. So this research kind of led us a little bit further to look at a little bit about this pseudo expert. And we did another study where we asked university students if they could correctly identify whether these pseudo experts' website information was credible or not. Only 25% of them were able to correctly identify that the website lacked credibility. And 33%, so a third of them incorrectly identified the influencer as a dietitian because the pseudo expert tends to use misleading information, including misleading credentials, to make them seem like they are more knowledgeable than they actually are. And 40% believe that the influencer used scientific evidence correctly. So this brought us to a third study, and this study looked at specifically the influencers following on 5 platforms. TikTok is not on here because this study was done several years ago. So that includes Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and Twitter and Pinterest. And we looked at their following and compared it to their credibility score of their websites or their Instagram posts. And essentially, what we found was that the lower the credibility, the more followers they had. So essentially, our dietitians, which fall in the high credibility group, had an average of 0.19 million followers, and that is more than 10 times lower than our weak credibility score influencers who have an average of 2.15 million followers. So overall, the bottom line for digital food environments, they can improve food access, they can support food literacy, and they can support community and connection. But, and this is a big but, they promote highly processed foods and they can promote harmful dietary practices. Additionally, the misinformation that they contribute to does erode public trust, including in our trusted institutions and health professionals. So essentially, food environments are increasingly more difficult to navigate. And this digital aspect of these food environments are just making it more complex and more complicated for consumers to understand and know what kinds of foods to purchase and what is appropriate or healthy for their families. So I just want to thank my team of collaborators and students, both at the University of Alberta and the University of Ottawa, along with the Canadian Foundation Dietetic Research and the Canadian Institutes for Health Research that have funded the research that I've worked on. And I'm very happy to take any questions.
Thank you for the presentation, Dr. Fernandez. We have some questions now for your career and your research. The first question is, digital age and food retail can change quickly. In your opinion, what precautions can healthcare professionals take to better educate people about health in this context?
So that's a good question. I don't know that I have a good answer. What can health professionals do to help educate the public? So there are some, I think some going back to just basics. I think consumers now, especially with all the information and the food posting and the culture around food online, there's this like almost desire to want food to be fancy or really nice looking. So I think we can tell our the public, tell consumers it's okay for food not to be fancy. It's okay for our food not to look perfect all the time. I think we need to help them understand that food is for nutrition. And that's maybe one start, but there's also some really positive things in these, and I'm assuming digital food retail services. For example, we can help older adults and families to have food delivered to our older adults that might have less mobility or family members who are sick. So this is one thing that has come out of COVID with people who are in isolation. The delivery really supported people who couldn't leave their houses to get food or prepare food or were too sick to prepare food. So these are positives, very, very positives, and they can definitely be used for older adults to promote even living independently alone if they can have food delivered to them. The issue is with groceries and some of the apps is that adults need to be, some older adults need to be directed and need someone to help them go through the steps to be able to set up the accounts and the logistics. So there are definite positives, and I think we need to focus on those positives with the public. So just like you would, and then And then just like you would in an offline environment, helping people make better decisions on a menu when you go out to eat would be similar online. So a little bit of awareness, a little bit of education, and a little bit of direction in these online spaces.
Thank you. Other question is, in your opinion, how can digital platforms start to encourage health choice?
I'm sorry. Would you be able to repeat that question, Lara?
How can digital platforms can start healthy options or healthy choices?
So, if I understand correctly, how can digital food retail service increase healthy choices or
Yes.
promote? Okay.
Yes.
So there is some good evidence that in these environments, and maybe there's two things here. There's good evidence that we can nudge people in online spaces to make healthier choices. And initially, when online, and I'm going to talk more about online groceries because this is kind of uh, um, a, a field that is evolving a little bit more rapidly, right, or evolving right now. When online groceries first started, there weren't many promotions, or there were barely any promotions. So people would just shop. And then there was this perception because of this, people just shop. And because they're not walking up and down aisles, they don't have the temptation to buy extra foods and to buy things that they don't need. So there were perceptions that shopping online for food reduced impulse purchasing. But this space has evolved so rapidly that on your online grocery store, there are promotions everywhere. And there are several studies that have showed that nudging or creating profiles where people can stick to or select or have healthier foods reminded will support healthy eating and healthy food selection. So there is definite possibilities for things like nudging in these online platforms, but there needs to be I guess, interest from the online markets, or we need to be able to have apps that are created or um, um, like little filters that are created that we can add into our platforms to be able to navigate them without having the pop-up ads and helping us to filter, foods by maybe low fat or foods by nutrients of concern. So those are definite possibilities. It's just not something that has become mainstream.
Thank you. And now some questions about your career. What advice would you provide to researchers who are starting their career, for example, balancing personal life with studies and mental health?
Yes. I have tried to do everything and anything, and that really made me burn out by the time I reached my postdoc, and I was had so much momentum that I was burnt out. And then COVID happened, and I unexpectedly got pregnant, and then my world literally turned upside down, and I went through a really difficult time, a depression, and had to go on medication while being pregnant. So I would hope that you can um, prioritize your personal life better than I did. That really forced me to slow down. Unfortunately, I had to have a really big event happen for me to slow down. And it has been hard to realize that it's okay not to do everything. So it's taken several years to realize, okay, it's okay not to publish many articles a year. It's okay not to get many or write many grants a year. I can still move forward and do research and enjoy what I'm doing at a smaller scale. So I think there's a lot of pressure for students because there's so few spots that it's really easy to get caught up in the momentum and just working. But I think for several years I barely took any kind of break. I was even writing scholarship applications in a tent while on vacation camping. Um, so I would recommend really try to prioritize your time block time for yourself, for your family, so you have that support and those connections. I have my husband who is fantastic throughout my training, and he has really supported me in the challenging times. But I think he really grounds me too. So prioritizing the people, and in, things always seem worse than they are in the moment. So sometimes it takes a bit to step back, and really reflect on, what this really means in 5 years, what this really means in 10 years. Is it going to matter the same way? And another way that I've learned to look at it, right now I'm an assistant professor. Have my contract renewed for another 2 years, and I'm applying for tenure this year. So if I get my tenure accepted, then I have a nice long research career ahead of me. If I don't get it accepted, then I can try one more time, another 2-year contract. The way I look at it is, I'm doing work that I really enjoy. If that work only lasts 7 years, then I'm going to have 7 years of doing work that I enjoy. And if it doesn't work out, then I can do something else. I can always do something else. So I think we have to look at things a little bit less seriously, especially in terms of our career, and focusing on, is this something I enjoy enough to stick with?
Thank you. And what types of skills do you think are important for academic career?
Good questions. It's not very different than a regular career, to be honest. Professionalism goes a long way. Communication skills are really important because you need to be able to write. You need to be able to not just write well, but write for different audiences. Science communication, speaking, so communication at all, for speaking and for writing, both for academics and your peers, but also for the public. So those communication skills are extremely important, but I don't think it's all that different than most careers, because communication skills are always going to help you. So a lot of the skills that you learn during your training, in your PhD, in your grad studies, in your postdoc, they are easily transferable to any other career outside of academia. So I would recommend focusing on the communication, because if you're good at communicating, it will be a lot easier to transition out of academia after. And if you're good at communicating, it's also easier to get your publications and be invited to present, and those kinds of things. So communication is a big one. Professionalism. I think it's, and I'm a dietitian, so professionalism in my program is really ingrained. But yeah, I have to keep on reminding my students, and I have to also sometimes, unfortunately, remind our trainees, even postdocs, about professional behavior, and that includes professional communication. That it can include things like collaborating, or like sometimes missing out an opportunity because your relationship with a partner is more important than the opportunity, or your relationship with a lab mate is more important. So there's all sorts of professionalism and integrity. Those are things that I value: integrity, and professionalism, and communication.
And you have studied at different universities during your academic education, which can be challenging at times. And what should someone consider when choosing to move to another institution? Sorry, institution. And what challenge did you personally face?
Yes. So, yeah, I think it's a lot easier if you can stay at the same institution. There's definite positives going to another institution. You get to experience a new research environment. The biggest challenges is that you have to learn the systems all over again. So even going, how to submit an expense report, how to use the library, what resources are available, which forms to use, which processes, it changes from, and that takes time and energy. Um, and then sometimes there's different research cultures in institutions. So I have been to several 4 or 5 institutions. So my undergraduate institution was fairly laid back. It was a small university. They did not have much grad studies, but my master's was at McGill University, which is a well-known university in Canada, and they have very high standards. So when I went from that university to another laid back university, which is a very high performing research university, but the culture was very different. I had to really calm down because I was very intense being at McGill and always having to do one thing after another, and then going to Laval and understanding you don't have to do everything to still move forward. And it was a much nicer environment. So I think sometimes if I had to give advice about choosing another institute, about the option to move institute or to stay where you are, consider, is the environment going to be better for you? Do you need to be pressured to do well, or do you do better when it's a laid back environment? And that might make a difference. If there's no difference in culture, in the institutional culture, it might not make a difference, but some universities have big differences. For example, I would not be able to work, and I didn't even bother applying to certain universities, knowing that their culture is a lot more intense than where I am right now.
Thank you. We have any question, Jonathan?
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you see me in the video? Yes or not?
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
So, good afternoon, Dr. Melissa. So, my name is Jonathan. I would like to thank you very much for your presentation. It was truly interesting to learn more about your work. And I had 2 questions to make for you. The first question is, what was the most challenging academic period in your career and why?
I would have to say it was my. It's hard to think of it now that I'm thinking. I'm saying postdoc was most recent. But I actually am going to say it probably was my undergraduate degree, because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and so I just studied, and I kind of studied everything. I was registered in the biology program, but I minored in business, and I minored in Italian, and I took poetry classes, and I took history classes, because I had no idea what I wanted to do. And it just didn't really amount to anything in the end. I didn't have a clear direction. So I think that was a really challenging time, because I didn't have a clear direction. Whereas in my later studies, my direction was pretty focused.
Thank you. The second question is, what advice would you give to a PhD student who intends to do an international internship during their doctoral studies?
That's a good question. So the first thing that I would check is your financial situation in terms of your scholarship, if you have a scholarship or if you're getting a stipend from the university, because that makes a big difference. For success, you need to be financially stable. You don't want to be, like really stressing about paying your rent. You don't want to be stressing about being able to pay for the food. And some cities and some universities are way more expensive than others. So I would double check whether your scholarship and the stipends from your supervisor can cover your living expenses, so that you do not have to constantly stress or constantly find extra contracts and work. Maybe you want to do extra work and contracts. I know I did during my PhD, and that helped me with my overall success. But it's not financial stress is not something you want to have hanging over your head. So being away from home, you don't have the support of a family member that can, maybe lend you some money or give you some food, or even help you out with a few things. So I think you want to be able to first double check that your funding will cover all your essential living expenses. The second thing is to kind of scope out what you want out of it. Are you looking to get a big CV from your experience? Are you looking to get connections, or are you just looking for an international experience? Because that can change the type of lab and the type of researcher you're going to work for. What do you need from your supervisor? Do you need mentorship? Do you just need their name? Because you might go to institutes where you barely interact with your supervisor, and you might go to other institutes where you're going to help your supervisor lead their lab. So I think it's really important to consider different aspects, including the relationships that you might be able to build for the future. If you're really just interested in having an international experience so that you can go home after a few years, then I think you just want to have an environment that you feel comfortable in, and that you can have a good relationship with your supervisor.
Thanks. And the third and last question, it is, what advice would you can give to the students that pretends to make the international internship and the doctoral study, for example, to make the first contact to the professor in another country? Do you have some advice about this?
Yes. Okay. First thing, do not use ChatGPT to write your letter. It comes out like it's just crazy. I get emails from students, and they might be from completely different countries, and they look exactly the same. And I don't know but it's definitely written with AI. So don't use AI to write your letter. If you need to, write it in Portuguese, and you can use AI to translate it, but write it very naturally and genuinely first. Explain who you are. Be very clear as well as your intentions. For example, if I don't understand, is this student looking for a PhD? Are they looking for an internship? Are they just staying for a few? I don't know. So be very clear about your intentions. Be very clear about your funding reality. Do you need a stipend? Are you coming with your own scholarship? Because the reality, especially in, I think, around the world right now, but in Canada, and I imagine in the US it's even worse right now, but it's really hard to fund students coming internationally. So if you're very clear about what you're bringing in terms of funding and in terms of independence, then you're more likely to get a response right away. I would also recommend, and this has happened, supervisors take time to respond to students, and then we never hear from them. So be professional. If you found something else, if you're exploring other opportunities, just give them a heads up. Oh, I found another opportunity. So, you can keep the door open for maybe if you cross paths in the future. Because the research world is pretty small, especially if you're in public health or in nutrition, even smaller. So those are some key things. Yeah, be very clear of your interests. Make it personal to you, but also to the supervisor. So if your supervisor is studying, for example, I study digital food environments right now, but in the past, when I was working as a PhD student, I published and I wrote, I have maybe just under a dozen publications on yogurt, book chapters, and all sorts of things, like a book and reviews. And I constantly get students asking me to work with yogurt. I do not work in yogurt. That was a part-time job during my PhD. So, do your research on what the supervisor is doing so that your email is relevant, because it's like, oh, this student looks great. Oh, they want to work on yogurt. So, so that you might get a response right away, because we do get a lot of emails. So the email needs to be pretty relevant to get a response. The other thing is, and this is the best advice I got looking for a postdoc, write them a second time, write them a third time if you're serious. And sometimes I get so many emails, I only respond to a student if they've written me twice. Write them. If you don't hear back from them, write them a second time, even a third time. After the third time, let it go. But that does help.
Thank you very much, Dr. Melissa.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Melissa. There are very valuable advice. We really enjoyed your presentation. Your path is fantastic. It's very nice to hear your personal difficulties. I had the same challenge getting pregnant on the pandemia.
Okay.
And I know what you mean when you say that we have to slow down and look to your family. Deborah has a little child too.
Mhm.
And for us, women in science, it's a challenge that is harder than for men.
Yeah.
So it's very nice to hear it from you. And I was really scared about your unpublished data on pseudo experts. And I am part of a project to disseminate information, evidence-based nutrition information. And it's really scared what we see in the Instagram, even
Mhm.
from our students in nutrition.
Okay.
Since, I don't know, from the marketing to pink collagen to women to the natural mushroom tea that makes you lost 10 pounds in a 1 month. I don't know. But I don't know what are you all doing as a professor in University of Ottawa or in your undergraduate course to teach these students to make them know that it's not ethical. I don't know if you have some strategies to fight against this industry
Yeah.
that offers a lot of money to you to do marketing on the networks and then
Yeah.
Instagram and media.
Yeah. It's a very slippery slope, and it's a pretty cloudy, and it looks like the outlook looks pretty dark. So at our university, we have created, we've done like a program in the dietetics program. We've revamped the program. So the next, when it gets implemented, there'll be a communication course. So in that communication course, there'll be some more specifics and on social, like even specifically in the course description, there'll be aspects on social media. That's for our programming. In terms of, I don't know that the university is doing anything in particular. It's something that is really hard to fight. In my own research, we're focusing on, and I just got a small grant to look at in Canada the diet. It's a bit of a complex framework for dietitians. Every province has their own regulatory agency. But we're looking at, essentially the project is looking at how we can empower dietitians to be more impactful online, because that our voices do matter, but we're not visible enough. So that's where I'm coming at it from a research perspective, because the only other way to look at it is regulating the platforms. And I don't have the power, the capacity, or the energy to kind of do that research. So, but that would be the most impactful part, is regulating the platforms, and that is really tough politically speaking. Because the platforms are mostly based in the U.S., and especially now, anyone who tries to reduce U.S. profits, the countries essentially get penalized. Recently, our Canadian government has been has had to step down from a battle with the platforms because of the U.S.'s current political situation. So I don't, like I said, it's a dark outlook right now. But it is important that it is comes from the curriculum, and not just in dietetics. I mean, we can do what we can in our own program, but it should be starting in the high schools, or even in the elementary schools at this point.
Yes, and I agree with the regulation of the networks, the digital media space. Well, I don't know if anyone else has some question. Professor Débora, Mariana.
No, we just would like to thank Professor Melissa Fernandez. It was very, very good. All your insights and to watch your path, everything you did to overcome your problems or the things that were difficult in your life. So all your international experiences. So thank you very much for sharing with us, and congratulations on your career.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. It was really a pleasure to speak with you today.
Thank you, Dr. Melissa. Thank you, Laura. So we will finish our last session of seminars. Thank you, all the students, again as well, for this third edition of the course. That was very pleasure. It was a pleasure to be here with all these guests. It was very valuable to us again. So I see you in the next edition of the course in the next year, and I hope Dr. Melissa can come to Brazil more frequently, and that we met at Canada, because we are intending to go to Canada too, Professor Deborah and I, to a sabbatical. So maybe we can meet there.
Yeah. Let me know.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.